Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones. This is Season 14, Episode 1. Today I'm talking with Yasmin Fahr, a food writer who has a new book that will be bound to appeal to all the foodies out there. Originally planning on following a medical degree, Yasmin changed her mind to enroll in a food program. Yasmin landed in New York City at 23. There she dove into the Food Studies Master Program at New York University. A dream come true. Yasmin explored food through history, culture, and travel, even crafting culinary tours of New York City's vibrant neighborhoods. This journey culminated in a cookbook proposal, Dinner with Friends. Her career unfolded like a delicious recipe. She worked in the 2010 Food and Wine Cocktail Book, freelanced at the magazine, and then ran a website's cooking section as a food editor. Yearning for the open roads, she became an undercover luxury travel inspector at Forbes Travel Guide. For 4 incredible years, she traversed the globe from Shanghai to Rio, living in New York City and London, while discovering the joys of solo travel. During this adventure, Yasmin penned a weekly recipe column for Serious Eats, which blossomed into her debut cookbook, the well-received Keeping It Simple. Fast forward to today, Yasmin is a regular New York Times Cooking and Webby Award-winning nominee for video work in the kitchen. Her recipes and writing grace publications like The Washington Post, Food 52, and The Guardian. 2 more cookbooks followed, with the latest, Cook Simply, Live Fully, out now. I'm now going to take you to my conversation with Yasmin Fahr. Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones, and today I am very, very happy to be talking to food writer Yasmin Fahr. Yasmin, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, for our audience who are not familiar with your work, where are you from and where do you live now?
So I grew up in the Boston area, and then I lived in New York for about 14 years with some brief stints in LA, London, Miami. But I just recently relocated to Menorca, which is a small Spanish island.
Oh, that sounds gorgeous. What's it like there right now?
It's beautiful. I mean, we had a bit of a cold streak, but now it's like low 70s, sunny. It's pretty perfect. Can't deny.
That sounds wonderful. I want to talk about your childhood. What are some of your cherished memories around food from your childhood that you could talk about?
So my family and I always had dinner together, no matter what, and I think one of my favorite memories is that our parents, probably to distract us, would always put on Wheel of Fortune. And so I think my sister and I would play, and we had my dad would be like, okay, $5 if you guess before the contestant. So it kept us busy. And I think also it was slightly educational, but it was just really fun. I saw all these memories of us sitting around the table, and it was an open kitchen. So my parents would be kind of cooking and chatting, and my sister and I would be focusing on the game. So it was just a really lovely time we all spent together.
Did you get to cook with any? Did any of your parents or other relatives cook with you or teach you any cooking?
Um, my grandmother actually is a wonderful cook, so I would often sit with her in the kitchen after work. She lives in England, but she would come stay with us for like a month or two at a time. So during that time, I'd usually kind of linger around the kitchen because she was such a good cook and would feed us. So that was probably someone I cooked with the most, but yeah.
Now, you originally wanted to go into medicine. You were doing pre-med when you kind of decided you were going to shift into doing food work. Can we talk about this a little bit? What turning point in college made you realize medicine wasn't the right path for you?
I think I always knew deep down it wasn't the right path for me, but I did love science. I mean, I still love science and biology and the human body. And so it just seemed like a logical thing to do. And at that time, I mean, I know food is very popular now and food writing, but then it wasn't really as big as it is now. So I didn't think I could have a career in food, but I think over time it was clear like food and writing and travel were just things that I'd loved so much. And so when I worked at a hospital in Cedar Sinai in LA for a year after college, I was like, okay, this is not the career path for me. I'm going to do what I really want to do. And that was sort of the push.
Um, you did the food studies program at NYU. Did how was that for you? What was that like? And was that kind of living the dream?
It was incredible. Yeah. So it's basically an interdisciplinary study so that we would use food as the focus to study like policy, history, culture. And then also we had this class where we would study the different neighborhoods of New York and learn about the food and the immigration. So basically, we just eat for 4 hours once a week, which was just so much fun. But you also like learn a lot too. So it was a nice way of learning from both sides and different angles. So it was great.
I want to talk about your career a little bit. You've worked with prestigious publications like Forbes Travel Guide and the New York Times. What are some of the biggest lessons you learned from these experiences?
Yeah, I've been very lucky in my career, but I think working with such like wonderful companies and people, you're working with people kind of at the top of their field who really care. And so it taught me in different ways from all the places I've worked to be really detail oriented and thorough. And, I worked at Food and Wine magazine for a while, and like we learned a lot about fact checking and things like that, which people kind of underestimate the importance of it, or maybe now not so much. But I think it's one of those skills that when you learn, it kind of stays with you. So really paying attention to details has been really important to me.
Your first cookbook, Keeping It Simple, stemmed from a recipe column. How did you translate from doing the column to doing a format for a successful book?
I got very lucky. So one of my former colleagues who I worked with, she approached me and asked if I wanted to do a cookbook based off of this column. And it was funny, it was at a time where I was doing a travel job for Forbes Travel Guide, and I actually sort of left food a little because I had worked at the startup and I was really burned out. And so I didn't even really know where my future career was going. And so when she approached me, it really shifted my path into writing cookbooks. So I was very lucky.
Keeping It Simple was a really great cookbook. It's something that I like to really, look at and utilize as somebody who's cooked meals for families of varying sizes over the years. And it's something that, we all, I think, talk about. And in a lot of the food things, you see things that are usually inaccessible for like the day-to-day grind. Like you don't want to come home necessarily and do something that's going to be like 4 hours long and you'll be eating at
Right.
11 o'clock at night. And a lot of the stuff you did in this book was really magnificent because it wasn't just simple, it was also really elegant and very kind of like, I mean, really cool recipes that were kind of like what had a wow factor. How did you factor this in? How did, I mean, this seems like, I mean, I know a lot of people talk about this, but this is kind of a hat trick. How did you pull it off?
I think it's just my like approach to cooking. So I have a very high standard of what I want to eat, and I really love food and care about food. But at the same time, I'm a little bit lazy, so I really want to streamline the process as much as possible. And so I think that's how I approach recipes. I'll have this idea for flavors and textures, but then I try to make it as simple as possible, and that's how the recipes come about. So I think it's that like two-factored approach to cooking. But a lot of those recipes are really simple, like mushroom pastas and rice dishes. Yeah, or things that I love to eat all the time and the variety of it too.
This takes me to your new cookbook, Cook Simply, Live Fully, flexible, flavorful recipes for any mood. This came out in April and it's got some really great reviews for good reason. I loved the cookbook looking at it visually, and it seemed that it was something that I was willing to bet that you had a lot of hand in it because it had a very personal feel to it and it was very cozy, but also just very beautiful. Do you want to talk about this? Did you have some hand in the design of the cookbook?
I did. I was really lucky that I got to work directly with a designer and really put my input and vision into it. And it's exactly like you said. I want it to be beautiful, but really simple and approachable and kind of be more of like a support for the recipes and the photos versus distracting from it. So I think with the fonts we chose, the layout, everything was really intentional. So I'm glad that came across.
What also came across to me, and this was, I think, kind of a, I think this kind of made me kind of sit up and take notice a little bit more than the regular cookbooks I get day in, day out. I think that like it had a big commitment to quality. You seem to like have like a really good notion of finding like the best produce, the best vegetables, and the best like cheeses and breads and making the most of them. Is that kind of your take on cooking?
Definitely. I think especially when you're cooking simply, you want to source the best quality ingredients that you can find and you can afford because then you don't have to do that much to them. They really shine. And I think also on a larger scale, it's good to support people who really care about what they're doing because it's better like for the earth, it's more sustainable, which I know that word is used a lot. But in terms of like chicken and produce, you can taste the difference when something has been raised well and with like care and thought, than something that is more mass or commercially produced. And it's not always available to people, but I think when I've been in situations where I haven't been able to access it, I can really notice the difference in the flavor of the food and the quality.
I really I mean, I have to say, after reading your cookbook, and I read it over like the course of 3 or 4 days and kind of revisited
Oh,
it a lot and went back to it, and you made me really think about my local farmers market. You got me going to the farmers market again, and you also
yay.
like got me baking bread again, which I haven't done because the one of the things in the cookbook is that you use really good quality bread in a lot of the recipes.
Mhm.
Was that factored in from your own like take on like your shopping and stuff and how you shop?
Yes, definitely. And I think especially with bread, I mean, it doesn't need to have that many ingredients. And when you're buying something from a supermarket, there's so many preservatives in it. And a lot of
Mhm.
times there's like vital gluten, which can be really difficult for people to digest. And so I think just buying simple bread from someone who makes it really well, or making it yourself if you have time, is just so much better. And I really love like interacting with people at bakeries and, in like the farmers market. So it's just really nice to support them because they work so hard to create these foods for us too. So yeah.
How do you feel now that the cookbook's out? It's been out for a month. How does it feel for you to see your baby kind of brought out to the public?
It's really exciting. I mean, it's been so fun seeing people cook for me and send me lovely messages and just hearing things like you've been saying, you took the time to read it, to really spend time with it. And that means so much. That's really what I wanted for this book is to be used, to be loved, and to be read. It's not just a book meant to be beautiful and sitting on your shelf. Like I really want people to stain the pages, flip through them, dog ear them, add sticky notes, and really make this something that's useful to them.
I want to go back to your career a little bit and talk about what excites you about it being a regular contributor to the New York Times cooking. Uh,
Oh, it's so wonderful. I mean, I think it's really the community of cooks that belong to New York Times Cooking because they're so passionate. They have so many opinions. They really, I mean, they have a lot of opinions, but they were in a good way and they really care about cooking and the dishes they make. So there's a lot of feedback, a lot of engagement. So it's really just nice as someone who develops recipes to know people are thinking about them, cooking with them, and that they're generally helpful, even if people make substitutions and swaps, which I love when people do that and make it their own. So I feel really lucky to be able to be part of this community.
with your extensive travels and culinary knowledge, what are some of the future projects you envision for yourself?
Ooh, that is a good one. I don't really know. I mean, I think I've been someone who gets excited about a project or gets an idea and then I kind of follow through with it, which is sort of how I ended up here in Menorca. So I think it might be something here as there's so much great produce, like, and I mean, even from the farmers market here, I've obviously shopped at farmers markets, but I think it's really like taken from the ground, brought directly there, as there's often like little bugs that crawl out from my cutting board even after I've watched something 2 or 3 times. So it's really like a much more immersive experience than I've ever had before. So I think something will kind of come out of that. I think so. Yeah, we'll see.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to pursue a career path centered around food writing?
Oh, I think food in general and food media has really changed, throughout the span of my career and especially in the last like 5 to 10 years. And a lot of it has kind of moved to content creation on Instagram or YouTube and videos. And I think while that is really wonderful, there can be a lot of pressure to create almost similar content. And so what I would say is to really figure out what you have to offer and what you want to offer and what excites you. And I would really let that drive whatever you create because I think that's what's going to differentiate you and also be the most fun. Well, you'll enjoy it the most creating something that you love and you're passionate about versus trying to do what everyone else is doing because that's the norm. So and I think there's a lot of pressure to do that. And I feel that pressure a lot too, but I think, and I'm trying to tell this to myself too, to really stick with what makes me happy and excites me because I think people will connect with that the most too.
So I want to ask my last question to you. What's
Yeah.
next for you now that you have the new book out? Are you looking towards another book?
Oh, again, I don't know. I mean, I hope to keep writing books. Like I love them. I love cookbooks. I love this process of like talking about them. But I don't have another idea quite yet. It might be something more in the writing and food writing realm. But I think as I just moved to Menorca, I feel like it'll really come from this time here and what kind of inspires me. So I'm trying to keep an open mind and not put too much pressure on it quite yet. But I do hope it's another book. I mean, I really love being able to create it. So hopefully that will happen, but I guess we'll see. Who
Okay.
knows?
Well, I hope so too, because I mean, I really love your books, and I really
Oh, thank you.
I want to urge people to get them. I want to mention to the listeners that Cook Simply, Live Fully, flexible, flavorful recipes for any mood. We have links to that in the bio, and we also have links to Keeping It Simple. So you can check those books out, purchase them online from the links. Yasmin, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. I've loved getting to talk to you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day in Menorca.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
That was my conversation with Yasmin Fahr. We are going to have links to her book, Cook Simply, Live Fully, in the bio. We will also have a link to Keeping It Simple as well. You're going to want to check out that one too. Please tune in next week when we have more wonderful cookbook authors and food writers. Until then, I'll see you at the library.